You step out to the garden on a Tuesday morning, and there it is. The tomato plant that looked fine last week is now half yellow, the bottom leaves curling under like dry paper. The pepper plant beside it is stunted, barely taller than it was a month ago, sitting still in the dirt like it has given up. The rose bush your mother planted along the fence has black spot creeping up every cane. The cucumber vine that came in so strong in May has gone pale and thin and stopped setting fruit. The potted fern on the porch step is brown at every tip. The raised bed lettuce is bolting and bitter when it should still be tender. And the young apple tree you put in 2 springs ago has hardly put on a single new branch. You walk to the garage and look at the shelf. A bottle of liquid fertilizer, $18. A bag of granular plant food, $24. A spray for the black spot, $14. A root stimulator, $22. A bag of soil amendments, $16. You have bought most of these before, some of them more than once, and still the garden looks the way it looks. Now I want you to sit with this. There is a liquid you can brew in your own kitchen in about 10 minutes from things you may already have on the pantry shelf that does something most folks do not expect the first time they pour it around a struggling plant. It wakes the soil up. It feeds the roots directly. It pushes growth that was stopped or stalled back into motion. And it works on plants that look too far gone to bother with. It is not magic. It is biology that has been sitting in the old books for a long time, and that every serious market gardener, every old-time farm wife, every careful orchardist knew before the fertilizer companies decided there was more money in a bottle with a brand name on it than in teaching folks what was already in their pantry. My name is Amos Stoltzfus. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I have been growing food on this same ground for a long time, and my family has been growing it here for generations before me. The garden I am working right now feeds my household through most of the year, and the method I am going to show you today is the one I reach for first when a plant is struggling, when a seedling stalls, when a tree looks thin, when a bed has gone tired. I will be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am. The title of this video is bold, and bold titles deserve an honest word of explanation. Dead is dead. A plant that has dried to a stick with no living tissue left in it cannot be brought back by anything I know of. What I am going to show you works on plants that look dead but are not. Plants that are dormant or starved or shocked or diseased but still have living roots in the ground. Plants that are sitting still when they should be growing. Plants that are yellow when they should be green. Plants that are diseased but still fighting. Those plants, in my experience and in the science behind this method, can come back faster and stronger than you would expect. That is what the title honestly means, and that is more useful than the bold version. Before I go further, for the folks who want all of this, every method I have shown on this channel and the ones I have not gotten to yet, all in one place, I have put it together in a book at my website, amosstoltzfus.com. I will not push it again in the video. If you want it, it is there. Now let me show you the remedy. Stay with me. Let me first tell you what is really happening in the soil beneath a struggling plant, because once you understand it, the remedy makes complete sense and you will never look at a sick garden the same way. Healthy soil is not just dirt, it is a living community. There are billions of microorganisms in every handful of good garden soil, bacteria, fungi, and the fine white threads of mycorrhizal networks that connect plant roots to each other and to the minerals in the ground. Those organisms are what take the raw minerals in the soil and convert them into forms the plant can actually absorb through its roots. A plant cannot eat raw nitrogen sitting in the ground any more than you can eat a raw grain of salt dropped in the dirt. The soil life has to process it first. When that soil life is depleted, which happens from overuse, from chemical fertilizers applied season after season that feed the plant directly but slowly kill the microbial community around it, from soil that has dried out or been compacted, from heavy rain that has washed the biology away, the plant goes hungry even if the raw nutrients are there. It sits still. It yellows. It becomes vulnerable to disease because a well-fed plant in living soil has resistance that a starved plant in dead soil does not. And when a plant is diseased, there is often a second problem sitting underneath the disease itself. The disease, the fungus, the blight, the spot, the wilt, has often found the plant because the plant was already weakened. Treat only the disease and leave the soil dead, and the plant recovers partway and then struggles again. Feed the soil, wake the biology back up, and the plant's own defenses come back online. This is what the remedy does. It is not a fertilizer in the branded sense. It is a soil activator, a microbial food, and a direct plant tonic all in one brew. And the three ingredients that make it are things the old gardeners have been using, separately and together, for a very long time. The first ingredient is molasses. Blackstrap molasses, the dark, heavy kind from the bottom of the barrel, not the mild baking molasses, the blackstrap. It is full of minerals, iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium. But more importantly for our purpose, it is a simple sugar, and simple sugars are food for the bacteria and fungi in the soil. When you water molasses into the ground around a struggling plant, you are feeding the microbial community directly. The biology wakes up, multiplies, and goes back to work converting the minerals in your soil into plant-available food. The plant does not have to wait for slow breakdown. It gets fed within days. Gardeners who have used this for years describe it as turning a switch. The plant sits still for weeks, and then, within a few days of the molasses drench, you see new growth at the tips. The second ingredient is apple cider vinegar, the raw, unpasteurized kind with what they call the mother in it, the cloudy, stringy sediment at the bottom of the bottle. That mother is a colony of living bacteria and beneficial acids. Apple cider vinegar slightly acidifies the water you apply it in, and most garden plants, tomatoes, peppers, roses, fruit trees, berry canes, prefer a slightly acidic soil. More importantly, the acids in raw apple cider vinegar, the acetic acid and the malic acid, help break down the mineral compounds in the soil into soluble form the roots can absorb, and the beneficial bacteria in the mother add directly to the soil biology you are trying to rebuild. This is not the white distilled vinegar from the chip aisle. That will harm the soil. It is the raw apple cider vinegar, the kind sold in health food stores and many grocery stores, in the glass bottle with the sediment at the bottom. The third ingredient is plain water, not tap water if you can avoid it. Tap water in most towns has chlorine and sometimes chloramine in it, and both of those chemicals kill the soil bacteria you are trying to feed. Rainwater collected from the roof is best. Well water is generally fine. If you must use tap water, fill a bucket and let it sit uncovered in the sun for 24 hours before you mix the remedy. The chlorine dissipates into the air. The chloramine does not dissipate on its own, which is why rainwater or well water is the honest first choice. Now here is the recipe, and I will tell it slow. For a 1-gallon batch, which is enough to treat 4 to 6 struggling plants or 1 small raised bed or 1 young tree, 1 gallon of unchlorinated water, 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses stirred in until it dissolves. The water will turn the color of weak tea. 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, shaken first to mix the sediment in before you measure it. Stir the whole batch gently. That is the remedy. 2 tablespoons of pantry ingredients in a gallon of good water. Now I know some of you are reaching for a pencil to write those down. You do not need one. The 1 tablespoon of molasses, the 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar, the 1 gallon of unchlorinated water, every measurement I just gave you is written down plain in the book at my website, the same one I mentioned at the start. So put the pencil down and stay with me, because the next part is the one that determines whether this remedy does half the work or all of it, and most folks get it wrong. How you apply it matters as much as what is in it. This is where the common mistake happens. Folks mix the batch and pour it all at the base of the stem, right at the crown of the plant, and then wonder why the results are modest. The roots of a plant do not live at the stem. They live out wide, often as wide as the plant is tall, spreading out through the soil in every direction looking for water and minerals. That whole root zone is what you want to feed. For a tomato plant, or a pepper, or a rose, pour the remedy in a slow circle around the plant at the drip line, the outer edge of where the leaves reach, not at the stem. That is where the feeder roots are thickest. Go around the full circle. For a fruit tree, walk the drip line of the whole canopy and pour slow and steady all the way around. For a raised bed of seedlings or lettuce, water the whole bed evenly the way you would with a regular watering can. Apply when the soil is already slightly damp, not bone dry and not waterlogged. Dry soil repels liquid and the remedy runs off before it can soak in. Saturated soil has no air spaces for the biology to breathe in. Slightly damp is right. If the garden is dry, give it a light plain watering first. Wait an hour, then apply the remedy. Apply in the morning or in the evening, not in the heat of the day. Heat breaks down the molasses sugars before they can soak in and harms the living bacteria in the apple cider vinegar before they reach the soil. Morning and evening protect the biology in the brew. Apply once a week for 3 weeks for a struggling plant. This is not a one-time fix for a starved or diseased garden. The soil biology you are rebuilding took seasons to deplete. You are feeding it back in cycles, week by week, giving the microbial community time to multiply and settle back into the root zone. By the end of the first week, you will often see new growth at the tips of a plant that was sitting still. Not dramatic, a bud breaking, a leaf unfurling, a color shift from yellow toward green in the lower leaves. By the end of the second week, the growth is usually visible to anyone looking. By the third week, a plant that looked finished is often growing as though the season just started. Now the honest word on diseased plants, because this is where I owe you a plain explanation. The remedy I have just described feeds the soil and strengthens the plant's own root system and immune response. It does not kill a fungal disease on the leaf surface directly. Black spot on the rose, early blight on the tomato, powdery mildew on the squash, those surface diseases need a separate treatment to knock them back while the plant recovers underneath. The simplest and cheapest surface treatment is a weak baking soda spray. 1 teaspoon of plain baking soda, a few drops of plain dish soap to help it stick, dissolved in 1 quart of water, sprayed on the leaves in the evening. The baking soda raises the pH on the leaf surface, and most fungal diseases cannot spread in alkaline conditions. It does not kill the fungus already there, but stops new spread. Apply it every 5 to 7 days while the plant recovers. For the soil remedy and the baking soda spray to work together, apply the soil drench in the morning and the leaf spray in the evening of the same day. You are hitting the problem from both directions, feeding the root system from below and stopping the disease spread from above. Within 2 to 3 weeks on a plant that still has living roots and living tissue, most folks see real recovery. The one honest limit here is this. If a plant has a disease that has moved into the vascular tissue, the woody stem or the main trunk, something like Fusarium wilt or Verticillium wilt, where the water-carrying vessels inside the plant are blocked, no root treatment alone will clear it. Those wilts live inside the plant's plumbing, and the plant may recover somewhat with good soil feeding, but will not fully recover without removing and replacing the diseased tissue, or, in some cases, the whole plant. This is the honest limit of the method. Know it and use it for the cases where it works, which is most of the struggling plants in most ordinary gardens. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters. Think about what we have just walked through. A tablespoon of blackstrap molasses and a tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar in a gallon of rainwater, poured once a week for 3 weeks around the drip line of a plant that has gone yellow or stalled or been hit with disease. Total cost for a full 3-week treatment of 6 plants, perhaps $2. The gallon of raw apple cider vinegar at the grocery store costs $5 and makes many months of remedy. The jar of blackstrap molasses costs $4 and lasts a season. Compare that to the shelf at the garden center. A bottle of root stimulator, $22. A liquid fertilizer for struggling plants, $18. A disease treatment spray, $14. A soil biology booster, $28. $50 or more to treat a few beds, and most of those products contain synthetic versions of the same biology you are feeding directly with the molasses and vinegar, dressed up in a brand name and priced for the season. There is no money in telling a gardener to stir a tablespoon of molasses into a gallon of rainwater and walk the drip line once a week. There is good money in selling her a $22 bottle with a picture of a lush garden on the label. So nobody at the garden center has a sign saying, "Here is the same thing your grandmother used for $1 a season." The knowledge faded when the garden center aisle got long enough to be believed. My grandfather kept a jar of blackstrap molasses on the shelf in the barn. He stirred it into water for the animals and for the garden both. He knew what it did to tired soil because he had watched it work his whole life, and his father had watched it work before him. He never called it a soil activator. He called it feeding the ground. That is what it is. The science just put a name on what the careful old farmers already knew. So, here is what I want you to do this week. Go to your garden or your pots or your beds right now and find the plant that has worried you most. The yellow one, the stalled one, the one with the black spot or the blight, the one you almost pulled out. Find a gallon of rainwater or well water, or fill a bucket from the tap and let it sit a full day in the sun. Stir in 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses and 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, shaken first. Pour it slowly around the drip line of that plant, going the full circle. If the plant has visible disease on its leaves, mix the baking soda, spray the same evening, and coat the leaves. Mark the day on the calendar. Do the same again in 7 days, and again in 7 more. Then come back here and tell me what you saw. Tell me in the comments below which plant you tried it on and what it looked like going in, and what it looked like 3 weeks later. The folks who have used this through a season report things that look like more than they expected, and I would like to hear yours. I read every single one. And if you would rather have all of this written down than held in your memory, the book is right below in the comments section, where it has been the whole time. Next time, since we have been speaking of feeding the garden from the pantry shelf, I am going to show you the old way my people make their own compost tea from kitchen scraps, the slow brew that turns what most folks throw away into the richest liquid plant food there is. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, find the struggling plant, stir the remedy, and remember that the ground beneath it is almost always more alive than it looks and more willing to come back